It's October 2019. I'm sitting in my edit bay, a warm but windowless room in the belly of a featureless industrial park. My fingers work the hotkeys as I sift and sort through terabytes of footage. Footage of cars, footage of flowers, footage of college campuses, students, experts, unstructured interviews with no real beginning or end. I was staring at the backside of what was supposed to be a Gen Z-friendly docu-series, but was, at this point, more A-roll than B-roll, with no creative vision to point my timeline in the right direction. Our executive producer, a street evangelist turned television personality, operated on a single maxim: shoot first, strategize later, which my team took as a kinder way of saying, let's figure it all out in post. And boy was I figuring it out. Each day I descended further and further into confusion, remixing that footage into a new style and story format. I was slinging new music, sound effects, B-roll, animated text, and even cutting temp voiceover myself, only to hear, this just isn't it. This is too short. It's too long. I don't like red. As an editor, this was brutal. As my first paid editing job, it was exactly what I needed. You're listening to God Deserves Better, a program dedicated to equipping the saints to create like our Creator. Welcome back to another episode of God Deserves Better. I'm your host, Zach Lovelace.
And I'm Jonathan Laura.
You're listening to this podcast probably because you're a Christian who is also a filmmaker. You're not necessarily seeking to be a Christian filmmaker, but you're looking to be an excellent filmmaker. You're looking to bring your faith into your work in terms of the level of quality that you're providing, because you're working for God. Mm-hmm. And we are Christian filmmakers.
Yes.
With a background, a shared background.
That's kind of what you were alluding to in the opening monologue. We worked together for this show that was targeted to Gen Z audience. And Zach was the director, editor. You were the distributor.
////
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But that's just because it was a mom and pop. It was a ministry.
Yeah.
But Johnny was also present in that monologue. You might not have heard it, but he was definitely an integral part of it. He helped shoot it. He helped direct it. I
produced a lot of Band-Aids, let's say that, for this docuseries.
Johnny was a Band-Aid salesman.
Yes.
And we were covered in boo-boos.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, it was a nightmare. But we're going to get into that. We're going to dive into that in just a minute. I want to set the table. I want to get people oriented to where we're at in terms of what we're covering. We're in a series right now.
Yes, this is part 3 of 3. We've gone over pre-production, production, and now today we're going to go over post-production.
Specifically on a short film, your first short film.
Yes.
Dear listener. And even if you have made 1,000 short films, this is stuff that we're hoping is evergreen and can be useful to you in terms of thinking about things differently or bringing your Christian faith into something. And we're talking explicitly to Christians here, but it could apply to a non-Christian as well, because we're looking to make excellent things.
Yes.
And we would implore you to look into the Christian faith and consider this and the truths of the Christian faith, because we think it uniquely equips people to make great films, which, we're a couple of theses in at the moment. One of which is that the Christian films stink. And we exist to try and help the next generation of Christian filmmakers rise up and make something of quality. And this series is devoted to covering the very basics of making your very first short film. Johnny and I have both made a bunch of shorts. We've made 3 seasons of a reality TV show, as well as a bunch of other evangelistic resources.
Yeah, under the same umbrella.
And you might be thinking, why are we not saying the name? A little bit of this is just professional courtesy.
We're not going to be talking the best about it. This is definitely a learning experience, so...
Yeah, we don't want you to get caught up in the specifics about it. And this show that we created, it taught us so much. I don't think I would be nearly the filmmaker that I am today if I hadn't had waded through the swamp.
Zach and I often refer to this as college 2.0.
Yes.
We graduated from this project.
Yes, you don't quit this job. You don't get fired. You graduate.
Yes. We still are very close friends with everyone that we worked on it with. And it feels very much like a university, for sure.
Yeah, these are my dorm mates. We think that having a conversation about this docuseries is going to help folks who are on their journey editing their first short film. And these very basic principles that we've covered so far, being in pre-production, is pretty much where the entire project rises and falls. Production is where you're purely, hopefully, executing and you're mastering time management
Yeah.
and your people interpersonal skills that you might have. Leading folks, taking care of them. That's honestly where your hospitality, you're going to be leading with hospitality. And leaning on folks that might be in your circle that you don't think of as being assets in this area, like people at your church.
Perhaps, yeah.
Sound guys, musicians, even actors out of
Family members.
Family members, friends, yeah,
Yep.
exactly. But one of the biggest takeaways that we had in the previous episode, and we'd recommend listening to the past two to get the full context of what we're talking about here, but one of the biggest discoveries that Johnny and I had was talking about the fourth pillar of our show. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about the first three?
We go through our pillars. Our first one is to equip the saints for cinema. Our second is to tear down the secular and sacred divide that we see in culture. Basically, we've come to the conclusion that all of the world is God's. None of it is secular.
As we see in Scripture,
Yeah.
the key behind that is that there's no such thing as neutrality. That every film is either honoring God or dishonoring him. It's either depicting reality according to what God has created and determined and desires,
Yeah.
or it isn't.
And then our third pillar is to become better filmmakers. So basically, a verse that we quote a lot is Proverbs 22:29, which says, "Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men." Mm-hmm. Basically, we want to be experts in our craft.
Yes, because that's what God deserves. Mm-hmm. God doesn't deserve craftsmen who turn out what the Christian film genre has become,
Yes.
or even just films that made by Christians that aren't good, that aren't even explicitly Christian. Because I feel like that's where I'm at in terms of what I think creating great film is. It doesn't necessarily need to be a sermon disguised as a film. It doesn't need to be explicitly Christian. You can have Christian characters. You can have Christian themes. It's playing in the Christian end of the pool, and it's coming to those conclusions. Or it's taking the audience on a ride to get them to dismantle views that they might have that aren't Christian. Mm-hmm. Whatever that might be, like life is purposeless and, XYZ sin is okay. I mean, a lot of secular media today is devoted to showing you that certain sins are okay and good and moral. And yeah, that's a whole rabbit trail, obviously. But
And then our honorary pillar, I guess we could call it,
yeah,
that we added in the last episode is know thy limits. Mm-hmm. This is important to any filmmaker, Christian or not. It will help you create the best film you can make. Mm-hmm. Work within the parameters God has given you in your current situation.
And a key to filmmaking is suspension of disbelief. So if I don't operate under the accurate idea of how I'm being perceived or whatever it is I'm making, how that will be perceived, one, I don't fundamentally understand my audience, because that's what I'm doing is I'm creating something to be consumed. I'm trying to get you to believe something that is not actually believable.
Yeah.
My favorite example is I used to work at the world's largest student film festival, Campus Movie Fest, and you'd see a lot of kids' first films doing that. And I would judge them, formally judge them and rank them and whatnot for the competition. And something we'd see all the time is people pretending to be ages that they weren't. So, the college 20-something kid is pretending to be a 40-something parent or whatever. And it's so unbelievable. They're not operating within their limits.
Robert Zemeckis's The Irishman.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, man. If it told me it was going to be an animated movie, I would have been happy. And The Irishman won the best animated film of the year.
That would have, oh my gosh. Yeah. Dude. But yeah, getting 80-year-old men to play 20-year-old men.
That's not true. Work. And that's something that you see even pros like Scorsese will fall into that ditch.
Yeah.
They don't know their limits. And I think that's actually, it's a level of hubris. It's pride, obviously. And I don't mean that in necessarily like a condemning way. Not to say that someone might not enjoy The Irishman. I think on its principle, what it's telling you, it was more interested in getting the gang back together than it was
casting the right people in the right role.
Yeah.
For sure.
Literally the scene where Joe Pesci first meets Robert De Niro and he says, "Hey, kid." It's like, and even at that time, they were only able to de-age Robert De Niro to be like 40-something, which is weird. But in the story,
knocked off like 5 years.
I know, and like dyed his hair black. Yeah. But in the story though, like the actual character was like 18 to 20 or something like that.
Just get someone else. That would not have been that hard.
I know.
They wanted the Oscar noms
for
these people. They wanted best actor, not supporting actor, I guess.
Again, it was about getting the gang back together, about scratching the itch that we made the greatest gangster movie. I don't know.
They probably could have made a better movie with older people,
I think there was a better story. I think that story deserves better than what they did. Obviously, Johnny and I hate this movie.
I feel like we rag on the same movies, the same directors,
Yeah.
Scorsese and Nolan.
Because the thing is, we really love them, and we expect better. I think is what it is.
That's
like,
true.
I fell in love
God
with
deserves
filmmaking.
better, guys.
God deserves better. I mean, come on, Nolan. Oh, I might, bro. Oh, I want to make a Tenet. Ooh.
We're gonna get into sound design later.
Yeah. That's actually, that's a good segue there. So give us some idea, Johnny, I'm a first-time filmmaker. I have gone through pre-production. I've gone through production. I made a film that's like 5 to 10 minutes long, which is our recommendation. What should I expect in terms of roles? Who is present in post-production?
Sure. So first you have the director/producer, which is probably yourself.
Yeah, same person.
Yeah, you're going to be doing a lot of the creative problem solving. You're going to be guiding your crew through the chaos and basically providing the vision that you've seen since pre-production and helping the editor eke that out. That said, the second most important position I would say is the editor. It's someone that edits and assembles the footage, ensuring the final sequence tells the story cohesively. They work with pacing, transitions, and just overall structure of the whole thing. You might have a assistant editor. This is probably for a bigger production, not for your first short film.
An assistant editor would be helpful if I'm the editor and director or producer, that if I just have somebody helping arrange things, it's like ultra grunt level.
Sure. The assistant editor will organize your footage, probably your project file and your B-roll, label it all. A-roll as well.
A little bit of connective tissue between production and post-production is DIT. That on set, I've done that in the past where I've had my digital imaging tech dude who owns the hard drive that my SD card is dumping footage onto. I have them lay out a very specific file format for my scenes.
Yep.
So we shoot things in order or out of order or whatever, that all that stuff is going into a predetermined folder that can be found easily.
Structure.
Can be found super easily in
editing
in the edit.
Organization is like super key to the editor. It's probably one of the best qualities an editor can have besides being able to tell a story.
Yeah, I would say rhythm, honestly, a musical mind.
Knowing the right frame to cut.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are a story logician. They're thinking about what information needs to be said. Oh, he went and he picked up this tire iron. Well, he didn't do it in the previous scene, and he's cutting between two different interior, exterior. We need to see him pick this up.
We need to bridge the
gap, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which that should be in the script, that should have been in the storyboards.
Yep.
And that's a key thing in information. But you might find in the edit, and I hope you do, so that you learn to storyboard better and script better and everything and manage your time on set, that you'll find things that you're like, oh man, I wish I had that. For example, one of the first big short films I made, Here the Vulture Waits, talked about it a good bit in the previous episode, but my friend who directed it and I produced it and wrote it, we have long since said we wish we could go back and just get one shot, and we think it would have made the movie 15 times better.
What was the shot?
A steaming cup of coffee. Just because...
What would that shot have done specifically?
One, it would have been a little bit of pacing, but it would have established timing, because we have a portion in the story where this retired sheriff comes to this diner. He's on his way to retirement. He's driving to Florida in the middle of the night. He's just, decided his fate. I'm retired. I'm no longer going to be a sheriff. He gets to this diner and it's full of dead people. They've all been shot up. And to see a cup of coffee steaming would imply that this just happened. And instead, the killers come out. And I mean, they were there. It still works. It's just...
Could have been a lot better.
It would have been this like really visual way to convey that information.
Yeah.
To edit, this is some hyper practical stuff. You'll find a lot of different schools that people attach themselves to. So Johnny is an Adobe guy. Born and bred, comes from being a motion graphics dude, that it kind of fits in that family. We know lots of other folks that are DaVinci people, DaVinci Resolve. And then I myself am a weirdo, and I like Final Cut.
I also like Final Cut, I will say. When we worked together on this show, it was made on Final Cut, and I was very familiar with Final Cut then.
And kind of going to the idea of having your DIT person creating a folder structure, you're going to want to have a folder structure on your computer that mirrors that you can ingest.
And also within the program as well, your file structure, project file.
Yes. And there are plenty of tutorials online for all of these.
Oh, yeah.
I liked Final Cut because I'm a total hobbyist, like self-taught person. So I just had that. I worked at Apple.
It's a lot more user-friendly for sure.
It is user-friendly, and that's how I encountered it, was working at Apple, that they make user-friendly things.
Yeah.
And so I got it for free. And that's really where most people go, is like whatever the free option is.
DaVinci is
I was
free.
gonna say,
Yeah.
that's what's on the rise now. But if you're a student somewhere, Adobe usually comes with a student discount, and
Yeah.
you can get a couple months free or whatever.
Yeah, if you're going to a university, I myself in my film classes got a free Adobe
Exactly.
account.
Yeah. And
Just to use under my student email, of course, but
But you long enough to edit a short film.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're even if a student that you're not in film school, but you're in college or even high school, you might be able to reach out to them and get a discount. But that said, you're going to choose one of these three, and they all generally have functions to help you organize the footage. Going back to something you said about editors, is that they should be organized.
Yes.
You do not want to lose your footage.
No.
And you can lose it in so many different ways. I'm not just
You're
saying
going to be thinking about a bajillion different things, and so you need to have the structure do the thinking for you.
yes.
You just need to be able to look and have it, again, easy for the user, I guess.
Yes.
Just look what makes sense. Footage from this date is located here under this name.
Organize it by scene or take or whatever it is you want to do, but just make sure
Each time you're making an edit into your sequence after an internal review, make a new sequence so that you don't lose anything you made in the past in case you need to go back for whatever reason.
A lot of this is determined in pre-production, which we both love, so we're obviously going to harp on that. But you would hopefully work with your DP or even yourself and just determine, okay, when I'm ingesting the footage, it's going to be named this, and this. And you can even change the name in the camera too, depending on the camera that
That's
you're using.
true.
That way you can kind of have a shorthand. And that hopefully is also written on your clapper.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the footage, the first frame of any time anybody was hitting record is the clapper. And you can see, okay, so it's scene 3, take 10.
Yeah.
And I can easily scrub through just by looking at the first image pulled up on my computer. I don't have to pull it into the editor at all.
I would say if you're making your first short film, go with DaVinci. Again, we said it's free, but also it is incredibly useful. It has pretty much everything in one program.
Started as a coloring program.
Yeah, but now it's just expanded. You could do some pretty deep dive sound mixing. Coloring is its strength. You can also get into motion graphics on there. You could do mass exporting as well.
There's different types of timelines. There's a more detailed timeline.
Yeah,
and kind of
there's a
fast cut timeline. And I would recommend going on the deep dive one and just getting lost. Basically,
for
just
sure.
exploring these things before you even decide to make or deciding on what film you're going to make, that you familiarize yourself with whichever.
And it's constantly updating online. Pretty much any question you have regarding it, any issue you run into, someone has run into that as well. Just Google hey, why is this happening? There's a forum that's probably talked about it, how to fix it. Tons of people using it. Very good. I have dabbled in it. Again, I'm an Adobe guy.
Yeah.
So I got to go download a different software to work on my audio, and I got to download After Effects to work on my motion graphics. But,
You like it that way, though.
Yeah, I guess. For me, I feel like I'm better with that tool, of course.
Yeah.
That's just how I've grown into it. But if you're starting off, I would say DaVinci is the way to go.
Yeah.
And there is a paid version that's has more that you have more access to. More things.
Beefier.
You have access to more things, but it is beefier.
One of the other roles that you're going to be thanking yourself for is a script supervisor, because coming out of production, going into the edit, those notes are going to you as the editor, and you're going to see all the circle takes, which is the best takes that the director.
Take 10 was the good take. Scroll through, look for the very first frame on the clapper. Take 10.
Pull that into the suite that you're using, and bada bing, bada boom, you're good to go.
They say a pro editor does not need to touch his mouse. He could do everything from the keyboard. He's very organized. He's very speedy. That's a very key thing to a professional editor.
Hotkeys, dude.
Hotkeys.
Yeah.
So if everything's organized, you got your hotkeys, you're just blazing. You got to be fast.
Yes. And there's deep levels to the hotkey thing. I only touch the very basic, jalapeno level of hotkeys. I never hit anything.
Yeah. I'm not as deep as I want to be. That's for sure. But
yeah. And your first time editing, I wouldn't recommend even using the hotkeys other than very basic ones.
Unless they save you a a lot of headaches, I would say.
Yeah. Again, this goes back to you doing research on the program that you like the most.
Yeah.
That look into the hotkeys, adapt what you want.
Another perk about DaVinci, you can pull in the hotkeys and the keyboard controls from other programs. So you, a Final Cut man, can pull in the Final Cut keyboard into your DaVinci program.
Yeah. I've done that.
Yeah.
Personally, I have
pretty
DaVinci as well. And yeah, I've done that because you were learning a language for whatever program you're adopting. So I wouldn't recommend Final Cut to a newcomer, even though it is more hobbyist, newcomer friendly.
It's not as mainstream.
It's not as mainstream. It doesn't play well really across the board. It can, but for the docuseries, we made that thing, we pushed it to its limit in terms of file structure and making B-roll libraries, because we had hundreds of hours of B-roll organized into this series of folders and libraries and whatnot that you can get really granular with that stuff. But
and A-roll. You said it was mostly A-roll. So
that's true.
All those interviews,
That's what it was. Yeah. We nicknamed it Thanos.
Yeah.
Because I wanted someone to snap and send me out of existence. But no, it was extremely helpful, and being organized is. I've met people who, like, I consider myself a decent editor in terms of the rhythmic side of things, like understanding, okay, how many beats do I need before I cut? How many frames do I need? But that's just a tiny slice of editing. Being organized. I'm not a very organized guy. So I am well, when I'm the only editor, I do well. When I have to be on a team, which is what I was, it's like people would jump into my edit and you're like, it's just disgusting and messy. And so yeah, you ideally as a short film maker, you're not going to need to lean on that level of organization, but I got to be able to find things. And we said this all the time. If somebody got hit by a bus, at the ministry, we would say that, like, if Zach got hit by a bus, are we going to be able to find and recreate what it was that he was doing?
Or to pick up where he left off.
Exactly. Pick your program, become a master in it. God is a master. He created a million types of flowers, a million types of bacteria. He knows how the human body works. He stitches things together. He knows how to convince anyone of anything. Obviously, he's God. You should aim to be that way. You should aim to create things that are beautiful like he did. And that requires technical understanding of things. So devote yourself to whatever program you want, as long as it's not iMovie.
Windows Movie Maker.
I started on Windows Movie Maker.
Oh, yeah. Who didn't?
Well, these people.
I don't know. I started when I was a kid.
That's fair. I guess
I don't know if Windows Movie Maker is actually still a thing. I think I looked into I have a PC and I was trying to find what the editing software was, and it's called something completely different now.
Rebranded it.
I guess so. And it's like very basic. It's a lot more stripped down than what it used to be.
Dude, I used to make that thing sing.
It's very user friendly.
Yeah. Well, and what does that even mean after a certain point?
It's too user friendly.
Yeah, it's friendly to someone who just doesn't understand.
I just need to make a video with text on it and
my boss
pretty song.
Needs a PowerPoint.
I need to make a slideshow for my company.
Yeah.
Highlighting my company outing.
Boy.
Something like that.
The star transition.
Yes.
Oh, man. Mega cringe. So anyway, as long as it's not something super basic and that has some professional use, Final Cut did start out as the head thing. It just has faded from favor.
No Country for Old Men was edited on Final Cut.
Zodiac was edited on Final Cut.
Yeah. And 2007, that was the peak of Final Cut.
Yeah, they did an update and wrote it for everyone. Final Cut 10, I think, was the one that everyone was like, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
Which I was okay with it. I was okay with it anyway. Some sub levels of editing that you might find is coloring. So having a colorist, sometimes editors who just cut up the footage and distribute the story information, hand it off to somebody who specializes in coloring it, which is something that digital film has to deal with.
Yes. But if you're doing your first short film, whoever's your editor will probably also be your colorist.
Yes. And again, this is probably going to be you.
And same with your sound designer as well. So the sound designer, besides just like raising volume and lowering volume, it's a lot more complex than that. It's working in the music choice. If you have music, any sound effects. If you look at a timeline of a short film or of any piece of film that you enjoy, there are a crap ton of sound effects that are added in post. It's not all just happening there. Probably none of it is happening live.
Yeah,
those sound effects, you add in post.
Oh yeah, footsteps,
Yeah.
picking up glasses.
It's just so that you have control over exactly how it's going to sound like. Sometimes you'll use whatever was recorded there.
I personally love sound design.
Yeah.
Equally as important as the visuals. Often gets overlooked because if they do a good job, you don't even notice it. But like good Foley, if you've ever seen people do Foley where they're like punching cabbages when they're doing punching sound effects and stuff.
That's really cool.
Looks like a cool job.
Yeah, they're just in a room full of junk and
they're just making noise, walking through pebbles and stuff, and it's like we want this sand to sound like some, a certain type of sand or whatever.
I remember seeing it for the first time on I think it was the Jimmy Neutron DVD. They were doing the Goddard, the robot dog, like his footsteps or something like that. I think it was like with tin cans or something crazy.
That's cool. I imagine
it's really cool
in an animated movie, and you have a lot of background in animation. You can speak to this that you have to create everything.
Yeah, you're basically.
Other than the voiceover.
You're the god of this animated universe.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And yeah, I mean, you get to decide what it sounds like to people. There's very famous sound effects that people have created, obviously like a lightsaber or something.
Wilhelm scream.
Wilhelm scream. Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I love the Wilhelm scream. So I think they found the original file for it, or like strip.
Wow.
Or maybe the original film.
Recently,
yeah.
Wow.
I watched something on it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway. So you can expect the sound designer again to be yourself and something else as well.
Or someone from your church who works in the audio team.
That's true.
If you have that connection.
Yeah. Or I would say this would be a role that I would recommend paying for.
Yeah.
Because bad sound, people will forgive a bad visual or a not so good visual, like an out of focus shot or something, but they won't forgive something in the sound department.
Yeah.
It just takes them out of it completely. Suspension snapped. Suspension of disbelief. Snap.
Christopher Nolan hasn't learned that yet. We alluded to before with Tenet.
Oh.
He purposefully drowned out any like important dialogue.
Is that for the IMAX thing? Like
no, he's said, and I've seen like videos like reviewing it. It's kind of like a vibes movie, is what I've heard. The general consensus for Tenet specifically, I guess.
I feel like Dark Knight Rises has the same problem. I feel like Interstellar has the same problem.
Dark Knight just has some weird voices. Specifically Bane.
Oh yeah, his is obviously.
But yeah, Batman's voice is very weird.
Yeah,
Interstellar was fine audio-wise.
It's fine. I just feel like the music overpowers things sometimes.
Sometimes, but for Tenet specifically, it was drowning out pretty much anything of importance.
Yeah,
I could only understand it once I saw it with subtitles.
Well, even
the first time I saw it, I was like, "What the heck did I couldn't tell my wife what I just watched when I got home."
Well, I can tell you, I heard the dialogue. I guess whatever theater I was in, and I still didn't understand it. So,
exactly.
It is definitely a vibes movie.
It is.
What a dumb excuse.
I mean,
my film sucks. Guess what? It's a vibe movie.
It's a very well made.
It doesn't
film.
suck. It
doesn't suck, but. Like the concept doesn't make any sense, like going forward in time while going backward in time.
Yeah.
I think he knows that.
That's fair. So he's like, you know what? The concept doesn't work. So the sound design doesn't need to work. It does. It is a vibey movie.
It's pure eye candy.
It is. Yeah.
Not ear candy.
I'm the protagonist. Shut up. That's something that a first-time filmmaker, no offense, would do. It's like, my main character's going to be called the protagonist. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Continually first place for fartistry.
Yeah. Christopher Nolan is the fartist.
Doing something for his own interest, I think, which is fine to some degree.
You still need to have some self-awareness.
You do, and that's know thy limits.
Yeah, know thy limits. And he has no limits, and so he should limit himself.
He should. I would love to see that. The Nolan going and making a just super simple.
Apparently, he's slated as like the next guy to bring back James Bond.
That'd be amazing.
I think he could do it. He's like that's like one of his main like inspirations.
I was gonna say his whole career I feel like has been kind of one big interview for that role.
Yeah.
Another role that you will interact with in post-production that I would suggest paying for is a composer.
Yes.
You can make your own music. You can use stock music. You can have no music. But I think
composers really fit the cracks that you need.
Yes.
Filled.
And it's more experience for you. If you're eventually going to have a composer, it's just that area where you're not likely to have this person, so you're probably going to have to just stretch yourself and ask somebody. Most people know someone who can play an instrument. So I would just start there, ask around. Yeah, anyway. And then finally, distribution.
Distribution, basically, that's the process of sending it out, the final product, to make it available to the intended audience. Mm-hmm. And so this can be sending it out to like a film festival or any other distribution. You could have like a theater release,
Straight up your
streaming, YouTube even. Yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend that.
Vimeo.
For a first-time film. There are a few online film festivals. Retrospective of Jupiter is one that I've done in the past, and it's awesome. They usually accept things. You'd have to, totally bungle it to not get in kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I really admire that. Like a just purely online experience. It's clean. You can easily email it out. You can post it to all your socials, that kind of thing. But it gives it a nice platform to be viewed on and celebrated on. So something like that I would definitely recommend. Mm-hmm. Speaking of vibes, I want to read some quotes to you, Johnny, about post-production from pros.
Let me hear.
Here we go. First one. Writing is fantasizing about what your film will be like. Shooting is reality. And the post-production is recovering the idea you had.
Ooh. That's good.
Ooh, that's from...
Who said that?
That's Nicholas Winding Refn, the director of Drive. Big vibe movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that idea.
Yeah.
Love that idea. Up next, we have a quote from Curb Your Enthusiasm director-producer Robert B. Wide. So he says, "It's not writing in the traditional sense, but I've always said that the writing process continues on the set and even into the editing room."
Yep, very true.
That's true for Curb as well, because they kind of make it up.
Yeah.
They improv the show to some degree.
But I said it earlier, like the editor needs to also be a storyteller for that reason as well. It is writing.
Yes.
Also in post.
You can take things in slightly different directions.
Yeah.
And it's cool. That's the fun. That's the live wire aspect of editing, that you don't really know what you're going to get.
You could take small deviations. You are kind of still on like a main highway, but for the most part, editor does have a lot.
Yeah. They can elevate or detract the story that you have initially written. So
they could totally rip apart your vision if they're not in sync.
Yeah, that's true. The last one I'll read here. It's from Joe Dante, the director of Gremlins and Inner Space. "Editing is where movies are made or broken. Many a film has been saved and many a film has been ruined in the editing room." And kind of on that point, let's talk a little bit about our docuseries. Let's give people a strap to the hood of the car kind of view on post-production here.
Okay.
Just 100 miles an hour through something crazy.
Yeah.
Can you set the table a little bit in terms of docuseries? You got hired right before.
I did. So I got hired on because they're expanding to make this new show.
This was a Christian television business.
And this is their first time making more than one show. Mm-hmm. So I was part of the new team. This show is going to target younger audiences. So we wanted to go out and film in college campuses, interviews with students on deep apologetic type questions, which is really good. Mm-hmm. There were some good conversations that were had. There were some bad conversations as well. Mm-hmm. And then we also talked with experts on these topics. Each episode tackled a topic from abortion to evolution, the gospel itself. Mm-hmm. And so we would ask these students would give us the pulse of what these young people think nowadays. Yeah. And then we'd go and talk with the expert and find out what the real answer is. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they would overlap. Some students would get it right. That was more rare, I would say. Yeah. But we would have to sit through a lot of footage that was unscripted interviews, just a big heaping lump of clay on Zach's lap.
Yes,
I would stay at the office till 10 p.m. chipping away at it.
I was definitely sculpting.
Yeah.
The idea behind the show came from an apologetic handbook or booklet that was handed out on college campuses that our boss thought would be a good idea to adapt into a show. It's a perfectly fine idea. And yet that was the most thought that was put into it.
Yeah.
It was then go film and we'll figure it out in the edit.
Yeah.
What that looks like. So we know it's going to be apologetics. We know we're going to do unscripted interviews.
All of that stuff that I said, like filming students and then filming experts, I think all that stuff was figured out after we had already filmed. Like we just went and did the student stuff.
Oh yeah.
And we were going to go from there, basically.
They hired a host.
Yeah.
From out of state to come in, a young guy.
He just needs to do apologetics with students on college campuses. That was pretty much all we gauged from them.
I followed him around. I shot it. Mm-hmm. I helped write a show Bible for it to kind of give a log line and different terms and design different elements to convey different bits of information basically. Like, it wasn't just the student interviews. We needed areas for our host to be able to communicate with the audience. So we developed an idea of a stand-up. So he's standing in front of the camera directly talking to the audience saying, hey, abortion, have you ever thought about it? It's kind of crazy. It's kind of a pagan ritual. It's kind of a blood sacrifice.
Yeah. I think we actually first started doing it on the campus, like right after some student interviews. He would like just react right after the interview.
Yeah,
we were kind of just rolling with that.
Floating head kind of thing where he'd be
because
like,
we didn't know what we were going to do with that
playing
footage. We're just like, hey, maybe this could be useful later on.
And we ditched that because we realized it wasn't really working. Like, they clearly were uneducated and whatever.
Of course, that was the point. People in college are not getting the right information, basically, was the thesis.
Yeah, they're having little to no exposure to critical thinking.
Yeah.
They're usually getting a narrative fed to them, something that aligns with the most popular ideas of the day.
Anyone who goes against it is crazy.
Yeah. If you're actually thinking through
conflict is bad. Go the easiest way.
Yes. Critical race theory and all sorts of other postmodernism on steroids you'd be encountering. But it would be myself as the lead camera guy, a sound guy, and 2 other camera dudes. And then the head boss as an executive producer with us, just basically to make sure things didn't go off the rail. But we were not allowed to tell people that we were filming a Christian TV show.
That was from the boss man.
That was from the top down. And so we would very quickly get into very awkward situations where we're talking to students, and our host is like, talking about very basic, normal, kind of.
And they would, as someone would, say, what's your stance on this?
Yes. Instead of just being asked questions.
Yeah.
They're lending their likeness and their answers to a show, and like, what is this for?
Yeah.
Oh, we just want to talk.
Yeah.
Oh, we just want to talk.
Oh, that doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's very not transparent.
Yeah.
And I still to this day don't understand why that was the case. But that's where we, in terms of production, how Christians can be different. And we eventually did adopt this. It took a little bit of pushing, but to just tell them up front that we are Christians. And you got better interviews that way.
Oh, yeah.
Because they knew what they were interacting with. And there wasn't this change halfway through when the gospel starts coming out in some of the questions, or our host is pushing back on them with Bible verses.
Yeah.
And they're suddenly like, oh, it's this type of interview. We had so many people bow out of interviews and just burn them entirely, where they're like, I'm done here. Not hospitable.
Yeah.
Clearly not caring for that person's actual thoughts.
Yeah.
You're just a prop, basically. So that was rough. And we interviewed hundreds of students.
Season 1 we did.
Season 1 we did. Season 2, because we did 3 seasons of this, we learned.
Yeah.
And that's actually where we get back to the office to edit, and we have mountains of footage.
Yeah.
Big, lumpy haystacks that we're searching for seconds that were useful to us.
Just sound bites that work.
To build a narrative. And basically it was all given to me, and I was locked in a room and told to just make sense of it.
Yeah.
And I thank God for that, because it made me the editor that I am. I really had to think about what information I had, what I needed. And so we had to go back out and shoot other stuff. We had to do that a ton. More B-roll, lots of A-roll we needed to shoot again. We got tons of voiceover. And this is actually where you come in, Johnny.
Yeah.
We developed a completely different element to help.
The Band-Aid.
The Band-Aid over here.
So I basically came on as the animator. Yes. This was a role that was unforeseen, and I was not hired to do this either. I just saw the need and filled the need, basically. And it was an interest that I've always had.
Which is great. That ministry was great to give you that opportunity.
Yeah. They bought me an online course. I learned how to do it, and now that's, it's what I do. I love doing it.
These Band-Aids, they were absolutely needed, because we'd get to the point in the edit where we were making an apologetic case. Again, we're talking about something like abortion or evolution or the gospel, and we were missing bits of information because we didn't plan when we went out.
Yeah.
We just shot. And so you had whatever the host said.
We didn't get the information from these interviews because they were unscripted.
They were unscripted. And we would even interview experts, which was, again, not scripted. They're not reading a script, but these guys, they wrote books about it. They have their shtick that they're bringing. But even then, we were missing bits of information. You would hope that the expert would be the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
They would say like, hey, okay, yeah, so this is why life in the womb starts at conception because of XYZ or whatever factoid that you think is needed to kind of push it over the line. Each episode was 4 segments. And so it was just a staircase where we're like introducing the topic, we introduce objections, we answer those objections, and then the final segment is kind of applying it to the gospel or the broader Christian worldview.
Yeah.
And
very Christian genre.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is, and I'm fine with it, especially in terms of it being a docuseries,
Yeah.
a reality TV show, basically. And obviously, for you short filmmakers, you might want to make something that's a reality TV thing or a documentary, a short documentary. This definitely applies to that in terms of sitting down and orchestrating interviews with folks, and how do you actually ask a question without getting an answer that doesn't make any sense. So let's role play a little bit here, Johnny. Like, I'm doing a documentary about string beans. Okay. And you're a string bean farmer. And I ask you, like, yeah, I ask you, how long have you been in the business, sir?
20 years.
Okay. Now, in the edit, without the interviewer, all I have, the information that I have from him is him just saying 20 years.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's meaningless to me.
Yeah.
So how do you pull information out of the string bean farmer here?
Just saying 20 years without any lead up.
And it's the art of asking good questions. And a lot of them aren't even questions. They're just statements where it's like, tell me about the first time that you knew you wanted to be a string bean farmer.
Back when I was 15 years old, my peepaw took me out back. Or, I don't know.
And he beat me damn near to death with a string bean.
And that's when I knew.
Yeah.
I still have the mark of a string bean in my behind.
Yeah.
You want to see it?
The real power lies in the string bean.
The unbreakable force of a string bean.
Oh, you ever heard of string theory?
Dadgummit.
Yeah. I control the universe.
You don't know the power that I have, son.
Sonny, I have the Tesseract.
We're really riffing on this.
Yeah, we are. Whatever. But it illustrates the point. It illustrates the point that getting information from real people is very difficult. Oftentimes, you also coach your person you're interviewing about saying, hey, can you repeat the question back to me? So how long have you been in the string bean business?
I've been in the string bean business for 20 years.
Exactly. That's way more useful to me as an editor.
Yeah.
So you start thinking like an editor while on set. And then even going back to when I'm just sitting in the office and we're planning seasons 2 and 3, I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to screw myself over. And I had to convince our boss that basically you are screwing us over in the edit. You actually save more time by saying you want something. And money. Well, that's very true. Manpower, morale, all of those things that if you tell us exactly what you want, because then even it's easier to fix those things.
Well, something we didn't say for season 1, we were flying the host in every other week from across the country.
Yeah.
And just because we need to get as much student interviews as we can, hundreds and hundreds of interviews.
And we did. We interviewed so many
and we
people.
used maybe 10% of those interviews?
Well, yeah, because ultimately what ended up happening is that you capture quantity over quality.
Yes.
And you have kids, okay, you have a certain point you're trying to make, the staircase thing of each segment 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, I need a kid to say this thing. I need him to say, the gospel is stupid. And, okay, well, I only have one kid saying something kind of like that.
Yeah.
So, the season 1 was replete with repeat kids, which, again, it's not ideal. And you're hurting your overall product at the end of the day, as opposed to what we did in season 2. We sniped as opposed to a shotgun.
Yeah.
We went, okay, we're gonna have this kid is for this episode.
Yeah.
And
that's what I meant by saving money is you don't have to bring your guy in every other week. He's here for this week. We're gonna shoot these episodes this week.
And these kids belong in these episodes.
Yes.
So if I get a dud, I know, okay, as the producer on set, I'm watching this kid being interviewed. That kid's a dud. I'll jump in. I'll kill the interview.
Yeah.
And I can actually jump back out and find another kid. Okay, we had somebody with this type of perspective. We should probably get someone who has this other kind of perspective. Yeah. And I tell the host that, and he's like, got it. And so when he's talking to people, if they're interested, he can kind of feel them out. And it made for a way better product at the end of the day. I think season 2 is some of the best Christian TV I've ever seen. And I've not seen a lot, so that's whatever. But just in terms of what it promised it could do and what it actually achieved, I think it's very close.
Yeah.
And that comes down to the power of pre-production and understanding I'm wearing the shoes and the eyes of an editor that whole time throughout each phase of production.
That was the fullness of our powers working together.
Yes. And then the animations were garnish.
Yeah.
They got the highlight points.
Yeah, because they were planned ahead of time.
Yes, and they were scripted, and we got the host to just record them when he was in town and maybe pick up a line here and there, but it was way easier to do.
Yeah.
And it, again, became...
Hey, could you record on your iPhone and email me the file of the voiceover for this animation? Please?
No. No, he did. He did.
And it worked.
It really worked. And some of your best work in terms of animation is in season 2 of that show.
Yeah, maybe not as much on the technique, but more of the visual storytelling, I would say. The concepts
we
were
worked
good.
very closely on all of those concepts.
That was the best time I think we had.
Oh, I loved it.
Working there.
Because it was more true to the filmmaking experience and flow that we're detailing here, and what I think is just industry-wide accepted, practice, that, we are working in concept when it's free.
Yeah, we're creating this world. This is a more malleable clay.
Yeah, I think, was it season 3 is gender and sexuality?
No, that was season 2.
That was season 2? Yeah, that's your best one, dude.
Thanks, yeah. It's really good.
And that was mostly you. I was out of town.
Were you?
Conceptually, yeah.
Yeah,
I came back.
The concept, I told Zach the concept, and he kind of like shrugged it off. I was like, oh no, I guess it sucks. But I went with it anyway, and it worked.
No, I don't even know what was in my head. And I must have been thinking about something else.
Probably, yeah. To me, it seemed like you were telling me it was a bad idea, but
No, not at all. It was a very good idea. A lot of times, as the producer director of that show, and all of the shows that we were making in my time there, basically, not the entire stretch. I don't want to take credit for any of that, but just it was very difficult because producing, you're the logistics guy, and I'm the manpower guy, and people would leave very quickly. They'd come and they'd go. And so I would have this dread that my best guys like you, and I mean, all the guys I worked with would just leave. And it's like, okay, now I have to explain to the top that I can no longer make this to the degree that I know it could be made. And I have to accept like a 10% degrade or 30% degrade or whatever. And so a lot of times that was my headspace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, stupid. I took over for season 3. This was after you had left. I think you had done the stand-up shoots, and I pretty much took over after that.
Yeah.
And we had to do another stand-up after you left, or 2. So, yeah.
And season 3 is good.
Season 3.
It's a solid
Have you
trilogy.
watched it 3 yet?
Most of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You wrote the scripts for season 3, though, correct?
I did, yeah. I wrote the scripts, yeah. Because what would happen is that the top guy, our executive producer, would write an outline, and a lot of times it did not make any sense, and I would have to go in and what he would call Zackify, which I think was just putting meat on bones and making it sound like Gen Z. Yeah, which is like I never actually did. I never was like, oh man, he's got Riz. I wasn't adding any of that stuff that's like gets dated so quickly.
Yeah.
It was just making intellectual appeals.
Yeah.
And I was writing a voice that the host could achieve. But we snatched that show from the flames.
Yeah, I guess so.
That I truly believe, with the help of one Tommy Antonucci, who was a producer that we worked with.
Yeah, you'll hear him on a future episode.
He went to bat alongside me, and we were able to convince the top dog. We were able to convince the executive producer to change it from shoot first, strategize later to strategize first, shoot later. And the thing is, this is an immutable law of the universe, folks. This is something that God has written into the fabric of reality, that if you want to ever create something, strategy and design always have to come first. I can go out and point a camera at anything, but before it becomes something, I have to decide who it's for, what it is, or be okay with like totally incomprehensible garbage.
Yeah.
Like
if you want it to be good.
Total chaos, yeah. Like there are people who I guess are into that. I don't know.
Experimental film.
Yeah, but in that way, you're already putting it in a category.
Yeah,
you're putting it in understandable. You're doing a design and a strategy.
Well, like you said earlier in the episode, in the monologue, it made you who you are today. How did it make you who you are today?
By having to serve stuff up over and over again. You once said that I'm the most patient and impatient man you've ever met.
I did say that?
Yeah.
I don't remember saying that.
That echoes in my mind, Johnny.
Really?
Yes.
I don't even remember.
Really?
I really don't.
Pulled me aside and shoved me into the lockers.
Give me your lunch money.
You're the most impatient and patient man I've ever met.
Was I angry when I said that?
No, I'm just kidding. It was like you were honestly like telling me something important.
Okay.
But it was kind of a joke anyway. Whatever. It demystified things. I come from the school of thought, as mentioned previously, of Christian fartistry. I'm up my own butt a lot of times. I think my movies and my ideas are the greatest that's ever happened. Whatever. I've got a giant head. Okay. And
That's true. That's true.
You're looking at it.
Yeah.
But it demystified things. A lot of folks come to the idea of wanting to get into filmmaking because they love movies and TV shows, and they get into it doe-eyed and just like, oh man, I'd love to make movies. I'd love to be applauded for my creative vision and all this kind of stuff. And I was serving up edits and different stories and versions of the story every day that it finally just kind of broke that in me, where I'm not saving the world with my edit. Even though this is Christian filmmaking, you would think that's kind of the thing that would push you through it and carry you in. Is like, oh man, I'm doing something that's saving people as long as one person gets saved. Mm-hmm. I've heard that a million times. As long as one person gets saved. Well, what if one person goes to hell because of the show?
Because of the show?
No, well, obviously not because of the show. But what if one person gets saved? That was a huge thing that kept coming up. And that's this like idealistic, conceptual area, like abstract.
That's said a lot, I'm sure. It was said a lot in our Christian production. I'm sure it's said on every Christian production.
Yes, on the like explicit Christian genre things.
Yes.
Again, I'm not super interested in making things that are that way, other than something like a docuseries, something that explores an idea, a documentary about abortion or whatever. And so what I realized is I'm not saving the world with my edit. I'm a metronome. I'm distributing information. It needs this one line. It needs this song to end here. It needs a song change so that the audience can understand that this thought is done and it's over. It needs a motivating sound effect to move us from one scene to the next. That's probably my biggest contribution, was the zoom.
The little sound transitions.
Yeah.
Is what it's referring to between scenes. I don't know. I feel like we pretty much said everything but the name of this show at this point.
That's true, because it's like the conceit was that it had to do with a road trip, you know?
And they were talking about truth.
Yeah. Anyway, I was a short order cook, is what I realized, and that I am more related to a garbage man or a butcher than I am this kind of heroic, angelic figure coming in and doing this high calling creative thing. That creativity doesn't have to feel like I'm doing something world changing. It can literally feel like I'm cooking like a corn dog at QT. So by demystifying it, I was able to think soberly about it. And so I could construct things without any ego attached to it, where it's like, I'm just trying to make sure that this works. That's it. I'm not beholden to my own vision here. I'm not beholden to my own ideas, other than insofar as I'm a human and I'm watching this and it doesn't make sense.
For those that don't live in the Southeast, QT is a gas station.
Yeah, that's
anyways.
you're good. But yeah, yes. So that's what it chiefly taught me.
Yeah,
was that shrink my head. And so for me, as coming from the Christian fartistry ditch, it was an antidote to pull me up and out of it.
That's good.
And that's an invaluable lesson.
We were definitely pulling hard in the Christian cringe direction.
It did pull me up and out of the fartistry ditch into the other ditch.
Yeah, you get into the middle that way.
You do, yeah. I think, when we realize that the split has to do a lot with people who favor answers on the cringe side and questions on the fartistry side, that what I need to get out of the fartistry side is to be okay with providing clearer answers, maybe moral to the end of the story kind of thing.
It's what a docuseries like this one called for. So
exactly.
For sure.
And that's where this is not an exact one-to-one, but it's just, I think it definitely applies in terms of realizing that what you're doing is not saving the world with your edit. You're just trying to become a technical master at this. Yeah. And it does have a technical thing, as much as people like to talk about it being subjective. And the reality is you have to cross an ocean of objective principles to get to the little strip of sand that is subjective. It's like
very true.
To make an edit make sense.
It's not all subjective.
It's not. Most of it isn't. Most of it isn't.
It's mostly objective.
It's mostly objective. Unless you're David Lynch and you're making some Eraserhead thing. And even that, it's like a highly personal thing. He has a meaning for it, whatever it might be. I'm not interested in it, but yeah, that's it. You have now heard, oh filmmaker, how to make your own short film from concept to distribution. Our wisdom, admittedly, is limited. We've obviously covered a lot of things that maybe don't directly apply, but indirectly do, and that can help you principally. Whether you're a first timer or you're a veteran, we hope this has been helpful. There's absolutely so much more to say, but no amount will prepare you for executing it yourself.
Go out there and make these short films. Mm-hmm. And we want to see them.
Yeah. Send them to goddeservesbetter@gmail.com, or just go to and you can find us on Instagram. You can send an email to us.
Yeah, send us a YouTube link.
We'd love to watch it, and we'll give you notes if you want them. We'll just watch it and enjoy it if you want it. We honestly want to see you guys as Christian filmmakers master your craft, and we'd love to see where that journey begins.
Yeah.
Coming up next, if we can tease this a little bit, we put everything we've learned about the principles of being a Christian filmmaker, again, the cringe and fartistry stuff that we've talked about, as well as everything these past 3 episodes, we put that into play, and we get into specifics of writing a God-honoring story. Yeah. So next episode, we actually have a guest.
We mentioned him in this episode.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Christopher Nolan.
No, it's going to be our good friend Tommy Antonucci, who you mentioned played a big role in our docuseries that we worked on.
Yep, he's a coworker and co-laborer in Christ, and he is truly an idea machine.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be great. Until then, let's get out there and work heartily for our good and gracious God, the Redeemer of men. Thank you for listening to God Deserves Better, a production of PEMMICAN Studios.